Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. I am Vadim from Sustainable Energy for All, and it's great to welcome you to today's webinar. We are meeting at a key moment. The Greenhouse Gas Protocol is revising its Scope 2 guidance, and for the first time, it brings in stricter hourly and locational requirements for electricity emissions reporting. These updates align closely with the core principles of the UN 24/7 Carbon-Free Energy Compact, matching consumption hour by hour and ensuring clean electricity is actually deliverable on the local grid. The compact has now grown to more than 180 signatories worldwide, united around the goal that every kilowatt hour should come from carbon-free sources every hour of every day. This shift is already influencing procurement strategies, data needs, and even national system planning, as highlighted in our recent materials. Today's webinar will break down what these changes mean in practice and how different actors across the ecosystem are preparing for this transition. With that, I'm very happy to introduce our first speaker, Shailesh Telang, Head of Asia Pacific at Energy Tag, who will talk us through the key changes proposed to the Greenhouse Gas Protocol Scope 2 guidance. Shailesh, over to you.
Thank you, Adam. Hello, everyone. Thanks for this opportunity to present Greenhouse Gas Protocol standard revision process and various updates through this session today. As already introduced, my name is Shailesh Telang. I am head of Asia Pacific at Energy Tag, and I'm based in India. Through this next 7 to 8 minutes, I'll be covering various key updates from Greenhouse Gas Protocol, and also we'll throw some light on SBTI, Net Zero Standard, and ISO 14064 Part 1 standard, which is used for carbon accounting. So let me share my screen quickly. Can anyone confirm my screen is visible? Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the confirmation. So GHG protocol. So let's look into the introduction part. Means we already talked about greenhouse gas protocol, like what it is, but basically it is a global set of rules, like standard, a global rule book for electricity accounting. Actually, it is used for emission accounting. It's part of corporate greenhouse gas accounting and reporting standard when it was originally launched. So it was added later in the corporate GHG standard as an addendum. And that's the reason it was known as Greenhouse Gas Protocol Scope 2 guidance. So this particular guidance is currently under revision. It is used by like over 97% of Fortune 500 companies. So that shows like how popular this standard is and the coverage among corporate community or corporations and supply chain to account their greenhouse gas emissions. So companies use it to account their greenhouse gas emissions and report it to their stakeholders through on a publicly available reports, etc. Companies who also participate in various disclosure platforms such as Carbon Disclosure Project, etc. They use this standard. It's the same standard also used because scope 2 accounting, scope 2 emission happens as a result of purchased energy consumption. And that's the reason this standard has direct connection with purchased electricity consumption as well. And that's the reason companies reporting their emissions, they use this same standard for their clean or overall electricity accounting as well. So this basically is a de facto sets of rule for voluntary clean power market, such as contractual instrument, for example, power purchase agreement, guarantee of origin certificates, or renewable electricity certificates, etc. All of them, when companies use them and report it under their greenhouse gas inventory, this is the standard being used. And this is the standard which is currently under review and which we are going to discuss in this presentation today. So it's a long process, actually. It's almost 4-year long consultation process in order to update the standard. So it's multi-year process which will conclude in 2027. It's the whole standard development process is guided by like integrity, impact, and feasibility. These are the three pillars to update this or revise this standard, and it's being governed by like multi-layer, governance system. It's a standard committee, then you have ISP, and then technical working group, etc. So technical working group is basically the working group which propose various changes or updates to the standard. ISP is where the voting happens, and then the standard committee basically ratifies the standard. So what we need to understand is we are already at the end of 2025. That's where we have the consultation going on. And 2026 is where a lot of review and further consultation will happen. And 2027 is where the standard will be launched. That's typically the process looks like. Now let's understand why this revision in the first place. So there was a big credibility gap in corporate emission accounting and reporting. This is the snapshot from the article by Michael Lebriak from BNEF. So he basically mentioned that reform the greenhouse gas protocol companies to claim like they use 100% renewable power on the basis of annual accounting. And that means they can actually offset their nighttime fossil fuel use based clean power with extra procurement of certificates, like such as guarantee of origin or renewable energy certificates, using like power issued to daytime solar generation, and make claims on the use of clean energy. And that's basically incorrect accounting method. And this is being widely used under annual accounting method. And these are the current rules, that's the reason this GHG protocol revision process is taking this into account to fix this basic accounting problem. So that's clearly a problem. There is, of course, a solution, and the solution is having more temporal and geographic matching. So as you can see here, current practices is annual accounting, which needs to be on hourly, move to the more granular and or temporal or geographic matching. And this is aligned with how the global power market works. Power markets are already functions on sub-hourly or hourly basis. Some of the power system works even at granular level at 5 minutes. So the electricity balancing already happening in that level. Spot markets, wherever available, they follow these practices. However, the attribute tracking system was not following this. And hence the corporate claim were not following this. That's the reason aligning clean power markets with the power markets is very important. That fixes this issue, and it incentivizes the demand side flexibility or energy storage, and make it like more long term and robust power market which functions on more efficient manner. So that's the solution. Solution is further explained on this slide, which basically shows the difference between what's happening right now. So in the first picture, you see the Mona Lisa picture, which is basically blurred one. That's the reflection of current annual accounting methods, which basically do not support flexibility. Completely ignores this. It do not take care of deliverability component. It do not take into account of grid congestion, and do not look into like any age of the facility or resource shuffling, that kind of elements. However, when it shifted to more reality-based accounting, which is how the power market works, it supports all three elements. It works on hourly or even granular sub-hourly basis. It takes care of deliverability element, and it takes care of the standard supply service, or it mitigate resource shuffling. It help companies to align with the power market and make their claims in a credible manner. It is already happening around the world. It's not like a new thing altogether. There are many companies who are already doing hourly matching everywhere in the world, as you can see on this map. So it's doable in every corner of the world. Of course, there are some differences, and availability options are limited in some of the markets, but it's happening. That's basically the key message here. Now, with that background, let's look into what are the revisions and various consultation going on GHGP process. So what is important here is the structure of the updated scope 2 reporting framework is not changing. It remains same. That means it is keeping the dual reporting requirements. That means location-based and market-based method will remain there as it is, but it will get improved. And on this slide, as you can see here on the highlighted part, which is market-based accounting, that's where the key changes are happening. Of course, on the location-based also, there are a few changes happening. So let's talk with the location-based method. So the first change over here is updating to the location-based emission factor hierarchy. So depending on availability of emission factors, the most preferred option is hourly emission factor. But if your hourly emission factor is not available, it can go to like monthly emission factor or annual emission factor. But all these are not available. Of course, this is the hierarchy which needs to be used as per the current revision. It also require to use the most precise location-based emission factor, and then it has to be accessible by the reporting companies, and also the activity data need to be available. Also, how to define that accessibility is like all the resources where these emission factors are available. It has to be publicly available, like free to use from credible source. For example, let's say in India, the Central Electricity Authority publish grid emission factor every year. So this is a credible resource need to be used. Usually, most in many markets, the state, the national agency connected to the power markets usually publish emission factor. That's what you can use. But if those are not available, then you can also go to the next level of credible emission factor, like some research institutions, etc., who publish this emission factor can be utilized. On the market-based method, that's where a lot of key changes are happening, which is now under the market-based method. One of the key change here is hourly matching. Hourly matching is like matching clean energy generation with consumption in that hour. So this is like known as temporal matching as well, which require that like all the contractual instrument, which is usually tracked by energy attribute certificates, are matched on the hourly basis. So that's basically the key thing. Deliverability, like require that all the certificates are sourced from, from the same market boundary. Like in many markets, it works on the bidding zone level, or in some markets, country boundary is the market boundary. Then the standard supply service, which is known as SSC, which is basically the standard supply by the utility to their end consumer. They can claim clean energy provided the attributes are allocated to them. And then also the residual mix definition has been changed. And then a lot of implementation measures also taken for feasibility, like companies can use load profiles. There are exemptions and exception threshold, like not everyone need to do this as well. So flexibility is always there. There are legacy clause, which is currently under development for, existing investment, in retrofit, what you can do for existing PPAs. And like it is phase implementation. Nothing is happening instantly because the standard is going to be updated in 2027 and launched 2027. So some of the key questions which usually comes into the picture, like, is it like 24/7? So it's not like 24/7. You don't need to, no one will be required to do 24/7 match from day one. It's not the idea. Is more accuracy needed? Definitely yes, because the current rule are too accurate to be credible. So you need to have like significant improvement on integrity, and the flexibility measures are also there. But yes, accuracy is needed. Is there a data? Yes, but it's not uniform across the market. Data exists because, as I mentioned, power markets are already granular, so you already need this. This data is available, provided how companies have access to that data. That's another question, and that's need to be checked in various markets. Is this immediate? No, because 2027 is still there, and there will be phased implementation as well. And another question is like, will it slow down the energy purchases? No, definitely not, because there are flexibility, there are phased in, and there are legacy clause. So it will not, slow down clean energy procurement. There will be smooth transition in the whole change. Okay, so there is a consultation going on. The deadline is 19 December. Scope 2 is separated from consequential method, and consequential method is basically the impact of clean energy procurement. That's a different accounting method altogether. GHG protocol will develop another standard or guidelines for that. But Scope 2 is not equivalent to consequential accounting. So please make a note of that. Also, Scope 2 proposal. So basically, in summary, is granular accounting, hourly, deliverable, and the fair share plus flexibility. That's what basically the hourly matching is. There is a guidebook which Energy Tag has developed. You can scan this QR code to download this. There is a dedicated website, Scope 2, which you can use to participate in the consultation process, like how to contribute or how you can add your opinion, etc. All this information along with important dates you can find in this guidebook. Let's move to the next section, which is a science-based targets initiative. So everybody knows science-based target initiative. It's basically sets the roadmap for companies to seek certification for their greenhouse gas emission reduction target, which is aligned with the level of decarbonization required, or what we call climate science. Why it matters? Because net zero pledges now covers like over 92% of the GDP. Like it's a lot of companies are setting SBTI aligned targets. So what's happening now in the net zero standard is SBTI release a revised corporate net zero standard version 2 for 30 days public consultation, and is closing on 12 December. So this is happening right now with major updates to scope 2 target setting and compliance. So what is happening over there, or in the nutshell, what is the direction of travel is SBTI propose the phase introduction of hourly matching. And this is happening for large electricity consumer with at least like 50% from 2030, 75% from 2035, and 90% from 2040, and seeking like feedback on whether these threshold are appropriate. So if you are interested, you can also participate in this consultation process. The next standard is ISO
Sorry, Sailesh.
14064,
Sorry
part
for
one.
interrupting.
Yeah.
Just a quick time check. We are already at 15 minutes, so
This is
we
the
could.
last slide
Yeah, okay,
anyway.
perfect.
Yeah. Yeah. So ISO 14064 is basically used for carbon accounting. And then this standard is also under revision. I think this is important point to highlight that it's being used by many companies, especially in the Asia Pacific, to get certified their greenhouse gas inventory. So there is announcement for broader collaboration between GHGP on or with ISO. So whatever happens between the GHGP will get translated into ISO. That's what we feel. So that's basically the direction of travel for all the ISO and SBTI. That's where I conclude the presentation. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sailesh, and sorry again for interrupting. Just trying to keep sense of time.
No worries. Thanks.
Um, awesome. So I will share my screen as well. Sort of wanted to bring back this discussion to like how it connects with some of our ongoing work with, say, the 24/7 CFE Compact. Uh, for some reason, it's behaving weird, but because I'm unable to see my notes, hang on. Yeah. All right. So thank you, Sailesh, and good morning, good evening, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me here. My name is Bala. I'm an energy officer at SE for All, and among other things, I work in supporting the 24/7 CFE Compact. And this is quite in vogue at the moment, in news at the moment, due to changes to the greenhouse gas scope 2 protocol revisions, and hope to sort of unpack some of the relevance and linkages through this presentation. So a little bit of a background, I'll keep it brief here. So UN Energy is the parent or sort of principal mechanism within the UN system with 30 plus international IGOs working to support SDG 7 on clean energy as well as the Paris Agreement. And Energy Compacts is one initiative hosted within the UN Energy, and it was launched in 2021, and it aims to foster greater voluntary commitments towards SDG 7. SE for All, especially through the capacity of our CEO being one of the co-chairs of UN Energy, has been supporting the Energy Compact process. And one such Energy Compact is a 24/7 carbon-free Energy Compact, which is again been around for 4 years and currently has 180 plus signatories with a specific sort of like a unique area of interest. I'll get to that in a bit. So I will be drawing on like some sort of slides and findings and points from the 24/7 CFE guidebook, which was launched earlier this year. And this is a document that has been designed for those who would just like to understand the principles, some of the key enablers, and quite often who are new to the 24/7 CFE journey. So I would encourage anyone who's sort of just interested or like looking to understand 24/7 CFE to have a look at this guidebook as well. This is a living document. We intend to update it over sort of Q1 2026. So if you have any feedback, that will be most welcome too. In a nutshell, as Vadim mentioned in his intro, 24/7 CFE, sort of the compact's overarching goal is that every kilowatt of electricity consumption is met with carbon-free electricity sources at every hour of the day, everywhere. So this is the sort of overarching principle, overarching mission, so as to say, and it's built on five principles. But within the context of today's discussion, it's the first two ones which are most relevant and most aligned with the sort of market-based methods divisions that Sailesh mentioned. I would just go into that in a bit, but I would also highlight that there are three other aspects which are critical in the sense being technologically inclusive. All carbon-free energy sources are considered as a part of this sort of compacts principle, adding to new carbon-free energy generation and maximizing system impacts, including social co-benefits such as creating jobs, building business innovations, etc. So in terms of the two principles, why it sort of connects to the GHGP is that uh, the first one is time match procurement. So this is where one of the key sort of tenets of the compact is to foster hourly matching or a more granular matching because that more realistically represents how carbon-free energy sources, particularly variable renewables like solar and wind operate. So this provides the sort of demand signals like solar plus storage, balancing grids, and understanding in a more realistic fashion how to bring in greater carbon-free energy. So that is captured within the first principle. The second one is on local matching or location-based matching. Another aspect within the sort of grid systems of the future, as we can call it, is trying to account for how the transmission systems flows and operates. So a lot of claims or like a lot of understanding of what is like procuring carbon-free energy can be set on the sort of on-paper matching, where there's actually no viable transfer of electrons across the regions where the claims have been made against. So the other sort of key principle within the compact is that it should be considered within an area which actually has a deliverability, or we can verifiably state that the point of consumption can actually be matched or aligned with the point of generation. These two are perhaps the most relevant within the market-based methods, but I would encourage all listeners to also look at the other principles and more details within the compact. But the other point that I wanted to highlight here is that it's not just the changes to the accounting standards which is driving this discussion within the 24/7 CFE, but it is also sort of other macro trends happening across the world. One such being the corporate procurement and corporate purchasing needs, and I'm sure we'll hear more about this in the panel discussion that follows. And the other one is building clean firm power. So as countries are trying to adopt to higher renewable energy shares in the grid, we are looking at trying to sort of scale these clean dispatchable power for balancing grids, and that within that context, 24/7 has become critical, so that we don't have challenges like perhaps what happened in Spain or Portugal or however it may be. The next one is perhaps most relevant to the APAC market, would be the redesign of electricity markets where countries are trying to future-proof and build systems which can account for changes in like how maybe renewable energy integration would be considered within corporates or for their own national planning strategies. And finally, the other sort of driver within the compact that we have observed is the growing energy demand thanks to the AI boom from data centers who have emerged as like anchor off-takers for such innovative CFE solutions. So there are many stakeholders in the compact, and you can, as I mentioned, it's 180 plus folks who are there. And one thing just highlight from this slide is that it's a journey. It's about trying to identify how it works within your individual institution's objectives and how you can participate. And the compact intends to create a community for that. Which brings me to my last but one slide. So, over to you before I hand it over to Divya. Is that a little bit of an explainer for the compact? This is something that we wanted to sort of add in, just based on our interactions with various folks over the year. The compact is voluntary and inclusive to all stakeholders without fees, and it is essentially a community of signatories with a shared interest. We have a community platform, and we welcome folks who are interested in 24/7 CFE to join the compact. What it is not is that it's the compact's not an accounting or a target setting standard. Those would be like the ones that Sailesh alluded to, either the GHGPs or the SBTIs of the world. We are also not a regulator or an auditor, so wanted to clarify that as well. So the compact's sort of recommendations or principles are not intended to be prescriptive, but more to encourage looking at decarbonization with a higher granularity. With that, I come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, please do get in touch. We are available at energycompact at seforall.org, or if you want to read more on 24/7 CFE Compact, you can always visit Go Carbon Free 24/7. With that, I'll conclude my presentation and hand it over to Divya to take over the panel discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Bala. Thanks for that presentation. Now it is my pleasure to introduce the panel. So with us today, we have Abhishek Shivakumar, the co-head of modeling at Transition Zero. We have Trigya Singh, the head of corporate sourcing at Global Renewables Alliance, Naoki Sakai, the CEO of D-Sharing, and Shailesh Lung, the head of Asia Pacific at Energy Tag. Great. Thank you for joining this panel, and thank you for being here. Just over the next maybe 25 minutes or so, we're going to look at, within the context of the updates to the GHG Scope 2 guidelines, we're going to look at what is actually going to be the impact of these proposed changes, what are the immediate challenges, and what is the outlook going ahead. And we have people from a range of organizations represented here, so we're going to hear different perspectives on that. So with that, Abhishek, I'm going to start with you. Transition Zero works on a lot of modeling scenarios within the 24/7 space. So your recent APAC 24/7 modeling shows strong hourly and locational variability. So how do you see these stricter temporal and spatial requirements in the revised Scope 2 guidance influencing national energy system planning?
Thanks a lot, Divya. Hi, everyone. Yeah, so at Transition Zero, we recently concluded a large project doing modeling of 24/7 in five Asian markets, so India, Japan, Taiwan, Singapore, and Malaysia. And what we were looking at here is the system level impacts of pursuing a 24/7 goal. So, at different target scores, all the way from 70%, 80%, all the way to 100%, and seeing how this pursuing this goal impacts the system at different target levels. And I would say the kind of key messages that we got from the study that were kind of common across the markets was one was the systems having to value flexibility more. So as we go from annual matching to hourly matching, the portfolios that are being procured are a lot more efficient. So for the same capacity, you're able to utilize it much better. So instead of just solar, you have a mix of wind, solar, and batteries. So there's kind of signal for flexibility. And I think this is a point that's going to keep coming up, which is the drive for clean, firm power. So I think instead of PPAs that were that you take as supplied, there's going to be this shift towards clean, firm power where you kind of match a load shape. The second thing we found was, in some of the markets we studied, especially Singapore. Singapore is a small island. There's not a lot of space to build out, large renewable deployments. So the role of interconnectors becomes quite key. So we found that there's a big drive towards interconnectors in national level planning in the Southeast Asia region with the ASEAN power grid, and so on. And I would say the other thing that's happening in the national level planning is this realization that that the system can benefit as well from these 24/7 goals. So there's a kind of win-win situation where the voluntary procurer is able to meet their targets in a more accurate physics-based way, but the system as well is able to benefit from excess electricity, excess renewables that offset more expensive fossil-based electricity that they have on the system. Yeah,
Yeah, thanks.
thanks.
Thanks for that. That's quite interesting. And just staying in the region, we don't have a government representative, but like from the corporate sector, Sakai, from your experience at D-Sharing, what do you think about the data availability and standardization that will become central to this new standard to hourly and location matching? So, what kinds of digital infrastructure and data sharing frameworks are most urgently needed to enable credible reporting within the Scope 2 guidelines?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Can I?
Yeah, yeah, it's
Oh,
great. Yes, please go ahead.
okay. Okay. Thank you very much. Actually, Japan is actually one of the countries most ready for hourly and locational matching. In fact, all 80 million electricity consumers already have smart meters, and their 30 minutes data are publicly monitored and shared with only a few hours of delay. So this means that under the market-based method, the third parties like us can already match generation and consumption at 30 minutes interval. And we can issue technically GCEAC at this moment with not so much additional investment cost. So that is the data collection side. And on the other hand, Japan also has a mature annual ESC system, which is government-run non-fossil certificate, NFC. So what we need now is a mechanism to link, to combine and reconcile this annual certificate with that third-party GCEAC to avoid double counting. I'm quite positive about the situation in Japan. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Shailesh, I'm going to come to you next. So with these proposed revised guidelines, how do you see energy tags work, influencing global alignment on these standards?
Yeah, that's interesting. Work stream actually for us. So scope 2 is clearly, converging towards the way power system actually works. So like settling supply and demand hour by hour and deliverable by grid. I think this public consultation, which is already going on, which explicitly propose hourly matching and deliverability is the new baseline, what we believe for market-based claims. So energy tag role is to make that shift like really implementable globally, especially in Asia Pacific where the markets are still evolving. So we have already published a granular certificate scheme standard, which is a global open source standard, which can be used to issue hourly certificates or hourly energy attribute certificate. Also, we call granular certificates. And as you know, it must contain a timestamp, location, like emission rate or uniqueness, and retirement process, etc. And then we also have guidance for like how registries can align without reinventing their own system. So that's where we are already working, and we think like energy tag role on this particular like enabling the ecosystem for this. We have already played that, and we are still supporting market development. So a common technical language for hourly energy attribute certificate is something we already have. We also have like accreditation pathways, for various stakeholders. We work with existing rack systems as well. For example, Sakai-san already mentioned about NFC system in Japan. So NFC either can go granular by itself, but don't need to reinvent the wheel. It can also work with, use the existing certificate and put the timestamp on the top of it and issue hourly certificate. Can use energy tax standards as well. So we are playing that role already in the ecosystem, either supporting existing system or in markets where system doesn't work. They can use our standard and create their own system, and we support that transition.
Thanks, Shailesh. That's good to know, and that's interesting because I think one of the apprehensions with the update is that um, it's going to require increased capacity for this granular accounting. So it's good to know there's already systems in place, or you're working towards that as well. Chugya, with the 24/7 compact, but also GRA, there's a role that these sort of collaborative efforts or coalitions can play, like that, like the way GRA is doing. So, what role do you think industry coalitions like GRA can play in preparing developers and manufacturers for this growing demand, especially within the context of hourly matching procurement?
Thanks so much, Divya. Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me here. The first example of this would be the existence of GRA itself. GRA was formed or launched at COP28 to coordinate the messaging, the demand, the research that IRENA, IEA, and other players have been doing for the past 20 years, was the tripling goal. The double down, triple up happened because we could coordinate countries, corporates, buyers, and suppliers, and organizations like yourself, AC for All, the UN Energy Compact, Energy Tag, maybe at not that time Transition Zero, but we're talking to you guys as well, and de-sharing as well. So it's an example of how coordinated push together can actually give the right demand signals to the climate negotiators as well. As seen at COP30, you would have been, tracking news everywhere. What has been happening at COP30? Not everything is as dark as it seems. GRA was able to really drive the message of tripling, but also the fact that electricity by renewables is cheaper than coal, has never been seen before, is because of this work that GRA has been doing. In the context of Scope 2 revision, which is we welcome that very much, and we really truly support 24/7 carbon-free energy way of thinking and doing. We see the role of coalitions becoming more and more important because there isn't one node or point of contact that you can sort of go to for all the information that's regional but also global at the same time. How we function as GR, and I can only take my example in this case, is we work globally as a global nodal point for tripling, but we also have an organization called the ASEC, which is the Asia Clean Energy Coalition, which works very locally in the Southeast Asia region to coordinate the demand and then coordinate with us on a global level. We also have launched recently LASEC, which is the Latin America Clean Energy Coalition at the recent COP, and that would work as a demand aggregator for standards, but also goal setting for grids and storage and pledges for the Latin America region, and then sort of bring it all together within the GRA umbrella. The Global Renewables Alliance or coalitions as such represent multiple technologies and multiple skill sets, which typically is very difficult to get together in one place. Sometimes, as a country, if you're wondering what's the best solution for me, should I work with consultants or think tanks or, of course, the UN and so on and so forth, it becomes very difficult, even as a policymaker, to really map out what needs to be done at what time. And demand aggregation or pooling of demand and asks is something which is very important. And we've seen that really driving the change. So I see this us organizations like us being the market convener and sort of designing or working on strategy comms on deliverability and flexibility as well, and also working on policy and market design. So there's a lot that happens in these coalitions, and I feel there is with COP31 coming soon. I mean, I feel this is something that we should start talking about already with the good announcements that have happened around grids, and you must have been hearing that upwards of 1 trillion will be mobilized using the UNISA mechanism. UNISA is basically another coalition by the IRENA. So these coalitions do help you bring it to a point where a conversation like standards or certificates or purchasing or corporate commitments are actually seen at a geopolitical level as well. And without the political push, as you all would know, not a lot moves. So this is where we see the GRA and similar coalitions being useful.
Great. Thank you, Julian. I think, yeah, I think, one of there's a lot of good work happening, but bringing the sector together and also the importance of messaging around it also goes a long way. Abhishek, I'll come back to you. Just within your work in the APAC region, but also maybe even beyond. So with this shift from annual to hourly matching, what have you seen, or what do you think corporations realistically can do to prepare for this change in terms of design, data needs, and like even contracting structures?
Yeah, so I would say probably three main things that organizations can do. I think the overarching shift is to go from being, kind of passive off takers to being more like active portfolio managers. So instead of, just getting certificates that match your consumption on an annual basis, you'd probably have to take a more active role in making sure on an hour by hour basis you have a portfolio that meets your actual consumption. And I think the ways this can be done are, I think one is, again, coming back to the point we made earlier, which is going for this kind of load shape matching portfolio approach rather than a single technology PPA. The second is, I think we'll see that the age of having, electricity bills that are PDF documents with annual consumption numbers, that's going to go away. I think we'll likely have a kind of API based like data stream of your actual electricity consumption from your supplier. So you have this data at hand. There'd be a demand from consumers to have this data at hand of how much they're actually consuming hour by hour. And then finally, I think the contracts themselves will change from just simple PPAs to more complex PPAs where there will be, for instance, a penalty for the provider if they're, for the number of hours they're not able to meet their some kind of clean energy threshold. So we'll move from having kind of, simple PPAs to more complex service level agreements.
So simple PPAs to complex PPAs. With that, Shailesh, I'm going to come to you for the next question. What do you think are some of the biggest practical challenges that markets face when introducing these hourly certificates, the verification, trading systems, metering, like all of that? So what has been your experience in terms of the biggest challenges that these markets face?
Yeah, well, means there are still some challenges for sure. I think means we can group them into different categories. The first one is like data and metering access. In some of the markets, especially in Asia, who already dispatch and settle electricity between like 5 minutes to 30 minutes block. So like we believe that operational data already exists, and we have seen that in many of the countries. However, the issue is access to this data. Like data is available, but it's not accessible by the end user. In some markets, of course, like we heard that in Japan it's accessible, which is great, but in other markets probably it's not accessible. The standardization and verification of this data is also an issue. Without shared this granular generation and consumption data, I think registries for granular certificates can't issue trustworthy hourly racks or granular certificates. Also, we think that registries and market infrastructure is also an issue. Like the most rack system built on annual volumes, they issue like annual certificates without taking time into account. Like upgrading them, these systems to issue hourly certificates. It can take time. while it can prevent double counting, but updating this and then taking into various product level accounting as well means I think registries need some efforts to update. I think it's a technical bottleneck. But GHGB consultation process is clear that hourly instrument must be uniquely tracked and retired with deliverable boundaries. So eventually they have to, but this is an issue right now. The system design and flexibility is also, some of the issues we see, like hourly procurement only works at scale if the power system can supply clean electricity, in non-solar hours, especially because solar is cheap and is available during daytime. That require like storage, various like firming products, and demand flexibility as well, like demand response market. Scope 2 consultation process even flagged that, and this is like feasibility concern and cost related discussions also need to be taken into account, like how hourly matching increase the need for shaping or firming or storage product. I think this is important question. And also we see regulatory acceptance. I think we have seen like market worries about it, like they think that it's too early, but actually there is no need to worry about, because as I mentioned, most of the data points are available, though there are some bottlenecks. Like Europe shows like what happens if flexibility and granular signals comes late into the market. We have seen like clean power cost price cannibalization in Europe during like, especially during daytime solar. So I think there is a strong need to learn that and evolve the markets in Asia Pacific, especially around this. So, but yeah, but it's a problem which can be solved with more granularity and more temporal and geographic matching as well. So this is well risk and opportunity on the same time. So the challenges, is not just one thing. Is we need to coordinate across data registries, flexible markets, policies, etc. But the timing is actually very good because in most of the markets, grids are still modernizing, storage costs are falling, and market reforms are already underway. So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, I think like data and access to data, like you said, will be a big challenge. But Sakai-san, you mentioned that in Japan, that's not as much of a challenge. But in your experience looking ahead, do you expect data sharing ecosystems to accelerate new business models? So, like real-time matching services or verification tools or other localized market signals?
Yeah, thank you. I worked for 20 years in Asian Development Bank as an energy specialist and climate change specialist. And I can safely say that we are now reaching at commercial monetizing stage, particularly in Japan and Singapore, and maybe in Thailand and Malaysia. So in Japan, with thanks to the energy tab, yes, we work together. Thank you very much. You know, in Japan, we can safely say the ecosystem is now accelerating the new business model. And our company is preparing for two business models in collaboration with several electricity retailers. So first, we will issue hourly matching certificate for larger consumers, such as data centers and manufacturers in global supply chain, as well as public institutions. So many of these users already hold physical corporate PPAs. So our service calculate their hourly matching rate and provide verified certification. Actually, we can do this service at this moment without any regulation. And second, to further increase the matching rate, we are designing a platform or mechanism for customers to sell and buy and trade the GCEACs in the future and in the post-generation market to fill the remaining hourly gap. For this, we are preparing the supply relationship with renewable energy generators and battery operators, whose output is predictable and especially at nighttime biomass power plant and storage asset, so which tend to command a higher value and can make money. So I'm quite positive that this ecosystem is being evolved Special thanks with Energy Tag and UN 24/7. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Chugya, um, do you uh, do you foresee that these revised standards will shift investment priorities, like for instance, towards storage or grid flexibility solutions or other diversified renewable portfolios?
We're already seeing this sort of language shifting and seeping into the grid pledge that has just been announced as probably one of the biggest successes at COP, if I may add that, coordinated by UNISA, and talks about 140 billion, upwards of that by 2030, and up to probably more than in trillions beyond that. But the point about investment, investing community, is we have to understand the more the regulations are, it's more difficult to invest. That's basically basic economics, right? Um, there's a term for that, which I'm forgetting right now. But even at that time, if you're looking at private investment or even multilateral investment, MDBs, DFIs, there has to be surety and volatility of fossil fuels on the grid, or gas prices, the subsidies that are going towards making fossil fuel cheaper. The whole world knows we need to stop that, which means the money has to be shifted towards a 24/7 like thinking, where the grids are clean from the beginning because you're purchasing clean, or you're doing it the right way. There is I don't think there is any debate left on the table, and there shouldn't be any, to really think about whether this is the right way or not. Yes, there will be initial, I would say, changes in the market that need to move the investment in the right direction. But having said that, I think there is a lot of investor confidence and interest in understanding what this sort of working way of doing is. How is Scope 2 going to really make it better or make projects more investable? And if you read the document and you understand the consultation really well, you will see that this is the direction the direction of travel is that. It's not just about having the carrot and stick method, where you have to do it for the climate, do it for the planet. Yes, you are doing it for all those reasons, but does the banking system or these entrenched systems, are they built to care for climate? Unless you put an ESG angle to that, right? So it differs from location to location, but the European example is actually standing very strong for the rest of the world to see where the investment should be going towards and what should they be thinking as MDBs and DFIs. And I think intentions are in the right place. What needs to happen again is, from a GRA sort of point of view, a very coordinated messaging, a lot of coordinated help from the community needs to also come together, so that the investment community is not on its own. And maybe we'll see some difference at COP 31. Hopefully, that's my wish.
Yeah, thank you. I have about 2 minutes before I have to hand it off, but there is a question from the audience. So I'm just going to read it out, and maybe anyone from the panel, whoever goes first, can answer. So the question is, why was additionality not included as an attribute for CFE? Could the 5,000 organizations that will be mandated to report hourly matched CFE require that a minimum percentage of their EACs must come from additional new build projects? Does someone want to volunteer to answer that?
Okay, I guess I can add some elements to it, but open to all the panelists. I think additionality is not included, but I think the GHGP standard generally, does not block additionality. I meant, if any reporting company wants to go for it, of course, it's welcome step, and it's means you are not blocked to report on additional clean energy consumption or making that decision on the basis of additionality. It simply does not require it. I think that's the only thing which GAGP, in the whole standard and the draft standard, as you can see. But additionality, also I believe that additionality is already embedded indirectly via hourly matching and deliverability, because you see temporal and spatial and geographic matching force company to procure clean energy during, especially during evening ramps, when you have sudden no sun that time, or low renewable hours. Or from the delivery perspective, there are like constraint zones and like where you have high marginal emission regions, etc. So it takes into account. So that naturally increases demand for energy storage, demand for other clean technologies like offshore wind or geothermal, etc. And so, in other words, hourly matching creates additionality through a market signal without needing, explicit additionality as a label. That's what I think.
Mm, yeah. I mean, enabling new generation is one of the principles under the 24/7 compact as well. And I think, I agree with you that even though it's not explicitly mentioned in the update, um, requiring hourly and location matching will indirectly or will encourage additionality as well. Unless someone else wants to also add something, I'm going to.
I'll just quickly add
Yes.
on from
Okay.
a supply side point of view because GRE represents the producers, the industry on renewables, and we do see this the granular 24/7 way of thinking as an increment towards what we're already doing on building up more renewables. In fact, more and more awareness needs to be built around the fact that this really does represent additionality in new projects because, again, 2030 is not too far away. We are not really close to the goal of 11,000 gigawatts. That needs to probably go up by 3x as we speak. So, 100%, this way of thinking is probably the only way we should be really focusing on and not get digressed.
Yeah. No, and also just to your point, Trigger, that I think one of the um, apprehensions of this update is that it will then prevent people from procuring clean energy. And I think the messaging around that this will indirectly also result in new generation needs to be socialized more for this update. But anyway, thank you to all the panelists for joining this discussion. I know there was a lot to unpack, and there's a lot more that can be discussed around this. But thank you to all our panelists and also Shailesh for your presentation earlier. I'm going to hand it over back to Bala, who will just give us a quick closing remarks.
So thank you again to all panelists and participants for joining us today. Just summarizing with a few things like the Greenhouse Gas Scope 2 protocol is out for public consultation with the last date for responses on the 19th of December. So you can look at Scope 2 if you want to know more, or you can just read up and dig through the 180 questions or so. Or alternatively, you can also just reach out to us or any of the panelists here, or you could reach out to us and we can connect you with the panelists if you have any questions. So you can contact us at energycompact@sc4all.org. You could also sort of read more on the 24/7 compact at Go Carbon Free 24/7.